All right, thank you very much. I want to welcome all of our board members and the members of the public who are also listening in to our July 26, 2021 board meeting. We'll begin with a call to order, and we will begin that by establishing a board quorum. So if Marcine Melissa will call the roll vote to establish a quorum.
Member Weeks,
Steve Weeks, public member here.
Member Pham,
Callie Mae Pham, public member, present.
Member Crabtree,
Jackie Crabtree, board member, present. Industry member.
Member Fairley,
Tanya Fairley, industry member, present.
Member Ellis,
Megan Ellis, public member, present.
Member Tran, Member Matos. We have 5 members present. There's a quorum.
Thank you, Marcine. Now we have a quorum. Let's proceed to the next order of business, the president's opening remarks. I just have a quick couple of remarks. First one is a special welcome to our new board member, Megan Ellis. She is a governor appointment as a public member. Her background in education administration should tie in nicely with our board mission. Thanks also to Callie Mae for acting as her board mentor, since both are public members. And Megan, anything any of us can do to help you understand how the board operates, don't hesitate to ask, and welcome on board. Secondly, we are going to be really pushed on DRC. We have a backlog of hundreds that want to have live hearings, not a written hearing. And with county COVID restrictions being imposed again, we have to be safe for both the public, our staff, and the board. This may cause cancellation of dates and rescheduled dates. So please bear with us on DRC hearings. We've always viewed DRC as composed of all of our board members, because we understand it's difficult to get away for 3 days at a time. It's kind of like Texas A&M football, a 12th man tradition, where all the student body stands in the stadium ready to go in should that last man fail on the field and they need someone else. Well, we have kind of a fourth man or woman concept. So I know it's difficult to arrange your schedule, please. And the board requirement is 3 board members acting as a DRC. We're not yet at the stage where we've been able to go through the administrative process of adding on the other people to sit on the DRC, but that's happening. But certainly for the rest of this year, it's going to be board members sitting on DRC. So if you can, please try and arrange your schedule to help us out on this committee. Now I will turn it over for board members' remarks.
I'd like to also welcome Megan to the board, and I hope us all have a great meeting.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to join the board and very excited for my first meeting.
No one wants to complain about my terrible football analogy? Okay, good. Then I guess.
No, Steve, I loved it. And you're always good at explaining things, and I loved it.
Wait, I could do an hour on Texas football, but I guess we have other business today. Let's go ahead with our next business agenda item, and that's discussion.
This is the moderator. I'd like to jump in real quick. It looks like we do have board member Christy Tran on the line as just audio only. And Christy, could I get a quick mic check from you just to confirm that you're here? Christy, if you are speaking, your microphone is muted. Okay, maybe it seems like we're still having some technical issues for Christy's end, so we'll try to resolve that in the background and let the meeting continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's talk now about the discussion of board minutes on the following dates, April 26th, May 25th, and June 4th. Are there any changes or corrections to those board minutes?
No, I move to approve them.
Great, so we have a motion to approve the minutes in a second.
Your legal counsel,
I'll
can I
go
just
ahead and
clarify
second.
that motion? That is to approve the April 26, 2021, May 25th, 2021, and June 4th, 2021 board meeting minutes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sabina. I will second that motion.
Okay, so the
This is
motion
Ellen.
has been, great, motion has been moved and seconded. When we vote on this, we're going to go to public comments next, but before we vote on this, I would ask our council, do we vote on this as bundled, or do we need 3 individual votes on each of the minutes?
You can go ahead and lump them all together. There doesn't seem to be any changes or edits or anything like that. And you can go to
Great.
public comment and then come back for your vote.
Great. In that case, let's now move to public comment on those 3 dates of minutes.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. We'll go in the order that comments are received. Once you are unmuted, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to give the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests.
I'm sorry, this is for public comment only pertaining to the minutes, correct?
That is correct. And it appears that we do not have any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do. Thank you.
All right, it is closed.
All right. In that case, let's move to a vote on the April 26, 2021 minutes, May 25th, 2021, and June 4th, 21 minutes we have a motion to approve. And let's go to a vote. Marcine?
Thank you. Member Weeks,
Yes.
Member Pham,
Tally Mae Pham, yes.
Member Crabtree,
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Member Fairley,
Tanya Fairley, yes.
Member Ellis,
Megan Ellis, yes.
Member Tran. You have 5 yeses.
All right. So the minutes have been approved. Let's now move to the executive officer's report and hear from Christy Underwood.
Good morning, everyone. Before I start my report, I'm going to just take a pause and ask our Deputy Director from the Department of Consumer Affairs, Carrie Holmes, to say a couple of words.
Good morning, Board President, Executive Officer Underwood, and board members. I am Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. I wanted to take a moment to welcome Megan Ellis as the new member of the board. Congratulations on your appointment and thank you for your willingness to serve. I'd also like to say welcome to Tanya Fairley. It seems like you're an old pro already, but it's only been a few months since your appointment. With Member Ellis's appointment, the board has 2 public vacancies remaining to be appointed by the governor. DCA and all the appointing authorities share the goal of a fully seated, diverse, and effective board. If any members of the public are interested in serving, please find the link titled Board Member Resources on DCA's homepage to apply for an appointment. Thank you to all board members for your service to California's consumers. Board and Bureau Relations is always here to help with appointments, training, or to facilitate communication. Please reach out if we can help in any way. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you so much. So before I get started on the statistics that are within your board packets, I just want to make a few announcements. I have a lot of traveling coming up for some different events that our board will be new to, and I wanted to give the board an update on that. In September of this year, the National Association for Barber Boards is meeting, and they have invited me to attend that. That is I believe it's a 4 to 5 day conference that's held in Washington, D.C. The National Association of Barber Boards has been around for quite some time, and for some reason, our board has not ever attended. So this will be, for as long as I've been here, this will be our first time in attendance with that organization, which is super exciting because we all know how the barber industry is growing so much throughout the country. So that will be a really good for our board to get involved with that. Also in October, there is a technical advisory group meeting that is being put on by the Council for State Governments, which I have been invited to as part of the Compact Licensure Technical Advisory Group. So this is the Council for State Governments has received a grant from the Department of Defense to look at compact licensing for this industry. And what that is one of the best examples is your driver's license. If you move to another state, you can use your driver's license from California to immediately drive in those states. So this group puts together legislation that can be proposed to our legislature that we would enter into a compact agreement, and it would allow for mobility from a state to state for licensees to move. Most, of course, importantly, is our military families who are constantly moving throughout the country. And this would allow, if they have a significant other, to immediately go to work if our state was involved in that compact. There's a lot of other compacts that exist in regulatory licensing. And so this is a 2-year project. It's we actually applied for this project, myself with several other states, got together and submitted an application. We had Minnesota, Maryland, Nevada, several other states were involved. And they actually accepted the application to look at cosmetology and barbering as a potential compact license. So we have been invited. This actually also is in DC, and it's a 2-day meeting in October. So super exciting that California will be involved in that. And then there's also just recently been an executive directors meeting announced in September. It's being held in Chicago, and that's a meeting of all executive officers of barbering and cosmetology boards to get together and talk about best practices and kind of the future, all the things that have happened in the last 1.5 years, 2 years, and what we've learned from our pandemic experience. So those are all out-of-state travel, and we have quite a process for out-of-state travel. They have not technically been approved yet. We have submitted that information to our department, which then goes to our agency and on up for approval for out-of-state travel. We normally have to request out-of-state travel approval way in advance, and all of these meetings came up only within the last few weeks. So hoping that we do get approval for that. The meeting in DC for the Compact Technical Advisory Group is completely paid for by the Department of Defense because we did receive a grant to study that process. So there'd be no cost to the board for that. And then there would be some cost to the others, but they usually find they're hosted at hotels where the hotels are giving a flat rate for attendees because everybody's coming from out of those states. So hopefully it's not too costly, and hopefully those get approved so that California has a seat at the table for those discussions.
Can I make a quick comment, Christy, also? I think with what's going on in our state of California, looking at our regulations and how we're operating, now more than ever before, we need to have communication and knowledge of who's who in the other states that are also in our profession. So I think that by you attending these conferences, more than pays for itself, and it's great research, and you come back always with something of importance to our board.
Thank you. And I'll keep members posted on our progress on getting those approved. So now we'll go ahead and look at the statistics. I do have a few things I would like to highlight for the board. On page 1 is our quarterly applications received. You can see in our last quarter of April, June for this past fiscal year, our numbers have increased. That's our slow return of getting back to normal after the pandemic. You can see in those previous months, those numbers were very low, but we're back to the 10,000 mark of applications that have been received. So a good indication that things are, at least with our workload coming into our office, things are getting a little back to normal for our licensing unit. On the next pages, we have, of course, our exam results. And we have a breakdown of our exams. One of the things we did differently this time on page 3 is we added, we added results for people that are coming from out of country. We've again pulled the data on the Spanish pass rates. They've, of course, continued to be low as they have been for quite some time. I recently reached out to our testing vendor to see if we could get additional data on the written exam and the types of areas, if there's a content area where these Spanish-speaking students are failing, so that we could try to focus more on that. I'm still waiting to hear back from them on that information, so hopefully I hear something from them soon if they're able to get that data. But one of the things I did want to bring to your attention is we've pulled some more data since the board packets went out, and in looking at barbers and cosmetologists only, what we found is if you looked at the entire amount of applicants that are coming in on barbers, 36% of our applicants from barbers are from the apprenticeship program, and 42% are from schools, and 22% are from out of country. When you look at the school breakdown, then this is not in your packet. This is data that's just in front of me that I wanted to talk about because we ran it sort of late and weren't able to get it in your packet. But I thought it was interesting that of our schools that students are coming, what we looked at is where are these students coming from? And we tried to find if there's a school that they tend to come from. Well, what we found is that 72% of barbers that are coming from a school program have not attended a school that is approved to teach in Spanish. So we have Spanish-speaking students that are going to schools that are not teaching in Spanish. And so it again goes to that what we've believed a lot in the past is that they are in schools that are teaching in English, but when they go to take that exam, they're opting to take that exam in their first language. And so we thought that was an interesting statistics. When it comes to cosmetologists, 52% of cosmetologists coming to the board exam right now are from the apprentice program. So a little more than half of the people testing for cosmetology are for, and this is for one quarter, mind you, this is for our most recent quarter. So 52% of those candidates are from the apprenticeship program, 19% are out of country, and 29% are from the schools. And then we took those schools and broke it down even further and found out that 63% of those students coming from schools, again, went to a school that is not approved to teach in Spanish. So what we've decided to do at this point is, one of the things we've talked about in the past is that there is a translation guide for all of our languages that we offer the exam in. So for Spanish, Vietnamese, and Korean. And those translation guides are on the website, but if no one ever tells a student that they're on the website, no one's ever going to look. So what we are doing now, we think the cost will outweigh the benefit, is we are attaching those translation guides to their admittance letter. So they're going to get it from us regardless, if they go look for it now. So they will have that in their hands. So if they're a Spanish speaking student and they've asked for that exam to be in Spanish, they're going to get their admittance letter with the date of their exam, and the translation guide is going to be attached to that letter. So we're hoping that gets that translation guide more in the hands of those people who are taking the test, and that hopefully we'll see if that helps. And we have just now implemented that process. Any questions on any of that information before we move on?
Well, I just want to say that's amazing. I think that's a very smart idea to see if that will help with the Spanish test taking, because obviously it's been an issue of trying to figure out how the solution is to that. So good job, you guys. Very smart. And then I also found it interesting in the data shared, the amount difference between people passing from an apprentice program versus a school program. So I found that kind of an aha moment to look at that too. Because it's obviously much higher in the school that they're passing versus apprentice. So that's a concern, is like,
Right.
what's the, what's going on that's causing that.
Right. Okay, just moving on, a couple more highlights on page 5. In the licenses issued for the last 5 years, you'll see our last fiscal year was only at 16,000. So that's just a direct result of what happened during COVID and the decline of applications that we received. But you'll see that in our licenses issued, the top chart there for fiscal year 2021, that we're finally, again, as I mentioned before, on the climb back up to where we normally are. Moving on next is our disciplinary review committee. We, as Mr. Weeks mentioned earlier, we were hoping to plan a in-person hearing, but with the COVID numbers back on the rise, especially in the Los Angeles area, we are rethinking our tactics on that. So for those members who did agree to come to that hearing, you'll be hearing from us today possibly with a new date, but we really are going to be watching what happens in our need is in the Los Angeles County area for DRC, and we really need to see what happens with their COVID numbers as they're continuing to climb every day. So we will keep you posted on future DRC hearings. We still are in fairly good shape on DRC, and that probably has a lot to do with a lot of the salons we are inspecting right now really have minimal, if any, violations. I can say I think the industry used their unfortunate time off during COVID to do some significant cleaning, because we're seeing some really, really clean shops out there. Unfortunately, we're seeing not a lot of people working. So I think that's still a concern, especially for this industry. But we are definitely seeing really, really low violations in our inspections, and our inspection numbers are going up as well, because we have hired quite a few new inspectors for California recently. So good work to the industry for keeping their salons clean, and hopefully we get hopefully that stays that way as we continue, because that would be certainly the best for our consumer safety. And then lastly, we have, well, not last, sorry, page 9, we have our enforcement report. Enforcement is getting back to where it should be as well, because COVID had the opposite effect on our enforcement unit, as we received a very high influx of complaints during the pandemic. So now that everyone is open and allowed to be operating, we're seeing less and less of those complaints and getting back to normal in our enforcement unit. So with our inspectors back in the field doing inspections, things are definitely getting back to normal for our enforcement unit. And then on pages 11 and 12, you have our budget update, our expenditure report, as well as our current fund condition. And then we have our outreach update.
Can I ask a question on the budget side?
Yes.
On page 12, I believe it's pretty standard for other boards to have months in reserve of 8 or 9 months in reserve, which is a good safe amount of money to have in reserve. And obviously our reserves are much higher than that. I can assume that our cost of renewal of licenses are about as cheap as they get as far as any professional license in the state of California. So that we can't drive. Are you anticipating additional monies being spent that might eat into the reserve?
So a few things that we're looking at doing this year is this year is time. We have a very healthy reserve, and I don't anticipate that going away anytime soon. I think if anything, we will really have to be looking at this closely to see what happens with SB 803, which we'll talk about in a little bit. If that is going to go through as written, there could be a need to really look at our fees to see if they're even a little bit too high for what we would be offering, as the bill no longer requires a practical exam. So there's definitely going to be some real analysis done on the budget in the coming months. I will tell you that we have some expenditures planned this year. We will be purchasing new cars. That always takes a big chunk out of our budget. And that's, we can purchase new cars when our existing cars meet a certain threshold so that they can be surplused out. And we have several cars that are meeting that mileage threshold. So we will be seeing some expenditures go up. We've also had a lot of salary savings this year, and we are almost fully staffed. So we will see that impact the budget as well. Any other budget questions?
Yes, another quick question. The on renewal fees. Our 2021 fiscal shows a $25,000 transfer, $25 million transfer and adjustment. Our total resources line shows 35 million, where most fiscal year end shows 60. So we were upside down 25 that had to be adjusted. I assume that money came from the general fund as part of the governor's COVID relief package to our industry?
That's exactly correct.
Okay. And we're still $10,000 short in revenue for 2021. So again, that would be the same reimbursement from the general fund because of we weren't collecting license fees.
Correct. We received a general fund payback for a loan that the board had made. And then we also had the COVID situation where the governor waived the renewal fees, but then we received that input from the general fund. So it will ultimately work itself out, and that line will go away. Most boards don't have that line at all, but it will work itself out once those items get adjusted.
That's the frustration of looking at governmental fund accounting, because you don't have a balance sheet to look as an offset for. So you're kind of guessing from the income statement. But as we speak right now, are we still in a period where we are not charging renewal fees?
Yes, we will be in that situation until the end of next year. So the governor waived the fees for 2 years so that since we have a 2-year license, so that everyone would receive a benefit. That
So
being
this-
said, we're still receiving some fees. So if a license, and we have a lot of the licenses that maybe expired a year ago and didn't, so if their license was expired in 2020, they can still renew that license, but they have to pay to bring that license current, and then they would get the benefit. So we're still receiving a lot of renewals in.
Don't we have, so we're going to have an adjustment coming for fiscal year 21-22 that doesn't look like it's budgeted for if we're still forgiving fees. This could cost another transfer.
No, the 25 million is to cover for 2 years.
Okay, good. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on to our outreach update. We have launched a new Safe Sandal season. For those of you new to the board, we try to promote Safe Sandal season every summer because pedicures are still one of our biggest consumer harm complaints that we receive. We had we've had great work from the Department of Consumer Affairs office for public. I can't think of their actual name right now, but they've been really, really helpful in getting our information published. We've done some videos, and we created a great Safe Sandal tagline that was involving masks, but of course the mask mandate then went away, so we had to change our direction quickly, and DCA has really helped us a ton with that efforts. So you can go on our Safe Sandal season webpage to take a look at some of our new information that we have on that. We did a school outreach event on May 24th. That was for the new examinations for aesthetics and manicuring that went into effect on July 1. And we were able to answer lots of questions from schools on that new exam. We had a few changes that were implemented for those exams. We did a senior outreach. We normally do this every year. It's usually on the Capitol lawn, but they did it virtually this year. And then we currently have scheduled a Q&A with myself at what would normally be a trade show that now is going to be a virtual show. And so still trying in these times to keep our message moving and keep going out there. And then lastly in the report is our practice status survey. This might possibly be the last time we see this for a little bit of time, because this is a question that gets answered at renewal time, and with our renewals not being sent out, they are not logging. There's no reason for someone to answer these questions. So we'll see how this goes, but we will probably lose data on this requirement now. And that is the end of my report, unless there's any questions.
Hi, this is Kelly. May I have a question?
Go ahead, Kelly.
Great. I just wanted to know, is there an update on how we're doing with exams or the practical exams and scheduling and that issue? I know that's been an ongoing thing. I was just wondering if there's an update there. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I actually had it written down right here and skipped over it. So we have a little less than 2,000 people still waiting to be scheduled. That's about where we normally are. And so that's good news. But right now we are scheduled out through almost the end of September, if not all the way through September. So basically right now, if you applied for an exam, you would not be seeing that exam site until early October. So it's better than it was, and it's not too far off than what it used to be, but still some work to be done. We are at full capacity at our exam sites now. So as we go through the next few weeks of finally being back at full capacity, we're seeing those numbers shrink to hopefully get a better time frame for those.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Anyone else has any questions? If not, let's go and move to our next item, legislative update. And we are now on the agenda item that people may be most interested in. Before we receive our updates from the executive officer, I would like to make a few comments. The board will discuss each bill on our agenda, and when needed, a motion will be made. We will open the meeting for public comment on each agenda item after a motion has been made and after the board has held a discussion. Members of the public will be limited to 2 minutes for their comments. And please note that by law, the board is not able to respond to your comments, and we should keep our comments only on that motion at that particular time. So with that, Christy, would you go through the legislative items?
Sure. So the first item on our agenda is AB 29. This will just be an update for the board. It does not appear this bill is moving. This bill was requesting that all of our board documents be provided to anyone who is who would like them. So likely our interested parties, we do send out paper agendas. But as some of you know, as most of you know, our agenda packets can be very long. So this would have been a significant cost to the board to be able to provide all those paper documents, even though we still do put them online. To mail the paper documents would just be an cost to the board. But the bill is not moving. We had previously taken a watch position. So I don't recommend any action taken on this bill. I'll go ahead and move on. So our next bill is AB 107. This is licensure regarding veterans and military spouses. It does require the board to issue, and all other DCA, all other DCA boards and bureaus as well, to issue a temporary license to those that are within the military spouses. So at our last meeting, we took a watch position on this bill. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Appropriations. I don't recommend any further action on this bill and just maintain our watch position. Any questions from board members? Seeing none? I think I see none. We will go ahead and move on to AB 231. And this is the bill regarding worker classifications, and specifically for our manicurist licensees. This is to maintain, or I'm sorry, this is the presented by Assemblymember Nguyen, and it would delete the January 1, 2020 inoperative date, making licensed manicurists subject to the exemption as a result of AB 5. AB 5 had a sunset date on manicurist exemption. At our last board meeting, our board voted to support this bill, and I would recommend we maintain that as well. Seeing no comments, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Our next bill is AB 492. This is the extern bill by Assemblymember Patterson. This bill allowed for externs to be in the salon at more hours and after completing less time in school. At our last meeting, the board voted to oppose this bill. This language has now been placed into SB 803, which we will talk about in just a couple seconds. So at this time, I don't believe there's any action needed on this bill, as it will probably not move, considering that the language is in SB 803. Next is SB 607. This bill the board has not taken a position on. This bill would require the board to waive licensure application fee, excuse me, and the initial and original license fee for an applicant who meets expedited licensing requirements. This is, again, focusing on our military and would be for those who show evidence of being married to or in a domestic partnership with or other legal union with an active duty member of the armed forces. There would be a fiscal impact on this bill, as we would be waiving fees. We would look at a loss of revenue in total of about $15,000. So at this time, I would open it to the board for discussion, and I would recommend that we take a support position on this bill.
I move to support it.
I would second that motion. This is Callie.
Any discussion now?
And if there's no board member discussion, we can open for public comment on this bill only.
This is a moderator. Would you like me to go ahead and open up public comment at this point?
Yes, please.
All right. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on this item only, please click that Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And please type, "I would like to make a public comment," or the word "comment," and send to all panelists. We'll go in the order that comments are received. And once you're unmuted, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, it appears we have no requests for public comment, but it looks like we may have our board member Christy Tran logged in. I'm going to try to promote her and then see if we can get a mic check from her. So one moment while I do that. And then Christy, are you able to unmute?
Hello?
Hi, this is Christy, correct?
Correct.
Okay, wonderful. It looks like WebEx logged you in as a different name, which unfortunately was why I couldn't find you earlier. My apologies.
I am so sorry. I have a technical difficulty this morning to signing in with my computer, and I'm trying to signing in with the phone. And for some reason, I signed in, but I couldn't hear what you guys saying. But now I am in a different sign-in name, so I apologize for that. But can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, this is
okay.
Christy
Wonderful.
Tran, industry member. I apologize for being late.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, we will go ahead and move on to our next and last bill, SB 8.
Christy?
Sorry.
Shouldn't we take a vote?
You're right.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I forgot we had a motion. we'll go ahead and have Marcine call roll for the vote on SB 607.
Board Member Weeks,
Weeks, yes.
Board Member Pham,
Callie Mae Pham, yes.
Board Member Crabtree,
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Board Member Tran,
Christy Tran, yes.
Board Member Fairley,
Tanya Fairley, yes.
and Board Member Ellis.
Megan Ellis, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion passes. We will move on now to SB 803. This bill was amended on July 15th in the Assembly. The board on May 25th met to discuss this bill, and we submitted our support if amended position. We asked that the bill be amended to remove the strikeouts of the scope of practice on barbering and cosmetology, so to place back in the scope of practice as it was prior to the bill originally being proposed. We also asked that lash extensions be included in the skincare scope of practice. We asked for a hair-only license, and we asked that the board sunset date be extended because that was not included in the original bill. The bill was amended on July 15th, as I mentioned. The amendments restored the current scopes of practice to barbering and cosmetology, which included cutting and cleansing. All the services that were previously marked out are now added back in. They corrected that applying eyelashes to any person is included. They established a hair-only license requiring 600 hours. This is a hair cutting and styling license, which would be no chemicals involved, and that is at a 600-hour course. We did also restore, the amendments also restored the phrase not less than on the 1,000-hour requirement, so that if there are schools that do teach more than the 1,000 hours, this would allow for that. And it added the language, as previously mentioned, about the extern bill to allow externs to be paid, allowing cosmetology students to, after completing 25% of their required clock hours, that they could become an extern. And then it did extend the sunset date for the board to January 1 of 2027. We do have a couple concerns that we would like to bring up for the board from a staff perspective, and that is on the externship language, because this allows a person to be in a salon getting paid. There would need to be a change to section 7317. We would have to mention in that section that participating in an externship program in an approved school is allowed. Right now, anyone receiving compensation in a salon has to be licensed. So this, the way the language is written to increase the extern program, they would not be licensed. They would be student externs in salons, and we would need to change section 7317 to allow for that. Other than that, I will open it up to the board for discussion.
Can I make a quick statement before we go to the board for comments? As Ms. Underwood noted, the board previously voted to support with amendments SB 803. All of our amendments were placed into the bill. I want to thank both the Senate and Assembly members for accepting our amendments, specifically adding back in hair cutting and styling to the practices of barbering and cosmetology. We also appreciate that the board's sunset extension has been added, extending the board to 2027. I want to reiterate what has been mentioned in other hearings on this bill. This is not a sponsored bill. This is the board's sunset bill. The board goes through the sunset review every 5 years, and this bill is a result of the sunset review process. This bill was not a surprise, as the legislature has been talking about barriers to entry and concerns regarding the required hours of schooling for many years, and has held several public meetings on this topic. With that being said, I will now open the meeting to my fellow board members for any comments on SB 803.
So I'm really concerned about the language here with the externship being paid. And I don't know how we can ask for that to be reworded. I know, Christy, you had given some language, so if you can help direct me on that, because I'm not comfortable having people getting paid who aren't licensed working in a salon. I think this is horrible I mean, are we going to charge clients to get, is that what that's saying? So a client could come in, we're charging them to get their hair done by somebody who isn't licensed, and they're getting paid for it as well. And we can't oversee that with our inspectors. And so how do we have unlicensed activity? I'm very confused on that. If you could clarify that for me, Christy, thank you.
Yes, so an extern, they are required to have complete supervision. They can be providing services, and yes, those clients would be paying for those services. The extern is supposed to have school identification on them, but we actually don't even track the externs that are in the program. We track the schools who participate in the program, and it's an agreement between the schools and the establishments on how they operate this program, because the externs should be following a plan. And I know some externs are done very well, and there's a plan that they should be following, where the establishment should be communicating with the school on what the extern has learned, because they are receiving a certain number of hours for that time spent in the salon.
Let me also, oh, Jackie, go ahead. Are you done? I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Sorry, Tanya. So when we have the apprentice program, the apprentices are not paid, correct? Can't hear you, Christy. Apprentices are not paid when they're doing their.
I'm so sorry, my mouse stopped working. Apprentices are paid. They are licensed.
Well,
but they have a license.
Okay. Yeah, we
so
need
they have to post that license. So they have a license posted that they are an apprentice.
Okay. Yeah, I'm done, Tanya. Maybe figure out how we can word this.
Well, that was my question. My hand went up real fast on that part too. Because my concern is, because I work with apprentice, that's how I build my salons. So I understand the apprenticeship program and them being paid. As far as the extern, with only 25% of their completion of their classing, and they're getting credit for the schooling, I definitely think that should be an option to be. Well, can there be an option to be compensated? One, because they don't have a license. So is a salon held responsible for this person, or is the school held responsible for this person?
Well, I would think that's between the school and the establishment. Again, our requirements for an externship program, they just notify us of involvement. So we don't track this. We don't know what, we don't have the students' names. If we were to go into a salon and find an extern, our inspector would contact our office, and we would verify that the school that they are attending actually has an agreement on file with that particular establishment. It's not a very common program, to be honest. And I don't know that that's ever even happened where we've run into an extern during an inspection for whatever reason. There are less than, I believe at last check, we had less than 20 schools that were even participating in the extern program. But again, we have no information on the student. So we do not know who that student is whatsoever. We don't know when they're in the salons or if they are working, how many hours they're doing or what. So it's just, all we have is the information from the school that they're participating in the program.
How could we reword this so that we have more control?
It would depend on what you would want. I would definitely think if the board chooses today to, the board could choose today to continue to support this bill with amendments and ask for what they would like to see changed. And then this bill, then we would relay that information to the next committee as well as the author of the bill.
Perfect. I would like to do something like that, support the bill with amendments on this extern. So we need to come up with language, I suppose.
This is
I
Sabina.
have
Can
a
I?
question. This is Callie
Oh,
Mae.
go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Sabina. I just had a question.
Yeah, so-
So for these externs, if there's any consumer harm, do we know who is ultimately responsible? Is it the licensee supervising? Is it the school? Is it the establishment? Do we have any of that information? Or
So I can tell you as a board, we would hold the if a consumer was harmed, regardless of who harmed that student, we would hold the establishment responsible. There is a provision that states that it has to be an employee-based salon, so an extern shouldn't be working in a salon where there are independent contractors. But we hold the establishments responsible for consumer protection in their room. We wouldn't be able to take any action against an individual because they are not licensed. So that if it was a licensed esthetician, for example, we knew that they were the person who actually caused the harm, we would take action against that individual because they hold a license with us. But because a student does not hold a license, we would not be able to discipline that student. And then, of course, we have very little oversight of the schools when it would come to that. So I don't see us, and just talking off the top of my head, I don't see us taking action against a school. It would fall to the establishment.
I think that would, even with the apprenticeship program, the establishment is responsible for the training and responsible for the outcome of what this person is doing under their licensing. So being an extern or an apprentice, it's like tomato kind of a thing, right? They're in the establishment regardless. They must be overseen by a licensed person. But I think, and I mean, getting paid, it's definitely a catch-22. The apprenticeship program, they're getting paid and getting their license. The externship, they're allowed to come out sooner than before. Should they be compensated for their training? I think that should be able to be left up to the individual program or the establishment versus saying that they have to be paid on an externship since they don't have a license.
Yeah, I agree. What do you guys think about this? What if we support the bill, but ask for an amendment and have the extern language that was just added into this bill taken out? And then support the bill and then take out this new language they put in about the externs.
Are you talking about the allowing them to get paid?
Just strike out the whole number 5 language because they just added that in. It wasn't in here before. So the bill had it has everything back in it we wanted. So I mean, if we can just have that amendment, support the bill, but amend taking out that whole language.
Christy, you have a good feel of the sense of the legislature on this. Where are they coming from on this?
I believe that I don't know this for sure, but I would assume that because there was a bill with the extern language and the amendments came into this bill, that possibly those senators and assembly members discussed that prior to the amendments getting put into the bill.
We could come up with a resolution on this, though, that would incorporate some verbiage from the board's perspective as far as suggested changes or concerns of our board that could be addressed.
And I think there's two questions when it comes to the externship program. Is one, should they be able to go? So keep in mind it's a shorter program. So we're talking about 1,000 hours. So now an extern is going to be able to go into a salon after only 25%. Before it was 10%. So now they only, 25% of 1,600 is one thing, but 25% of 1,000 is they only have to complete a small amount of numbers, and then they're already working in a salon on consumers. So there's that issue that the amount of education or the amount of time they have to be in school before they go into a salon is changing because the course is so much smaller. So there's that issue.
Real quick, Christy, let me ask you a question. That can compute to 250 hours before they get into a salon, right? Okay,
Right.
So I think we have to clarify what we're being hung up on, because as a person who uses apprentices and encourages externs, because I feel like they should be able to get into the salon sooner, 250 hours of education would give them the basis of what they need. And then when they go into the salon, it's on the job training. I personally don't see that as something that should hold it up, because of what the base training typically is in the format of the schooling. So 250 hours is that's still 2 months in school if we look at a full-time program, depending on what their program is. So I just want them to look at it from that point of view, that it's still 250 hours. It's not like it's, after 20 hours, they get to go into a salon. So I'll be quiet now.
No, I get what you're saying, Tanya, for sure. But the difference is that you are a certified trainer. You're an educator, where somebody, if they went into these salons, they're not, you know what I mean? It could be like me, I don't know. And I just have them come in and I know they're getting on the job training, but are they getting, we already see the apprentice rates of passing low. So I just wonder if we're opening up more things and just becoming too much of a free for all. That's why we have apprentice programs, right?
But I think that what we're missing is the education piece, right? At the end of the day, if they're in a salon working with a licensed professional, then they're getting the training from a licensed professional. They're not getting trained from, someone else off the streets. That would be the overall thought process of the program, is that they take this person who's been in school, got their 250 hours, put them in a salon setting so they can begin their actual learning how to service clients. Most salon owners and people who are in the training side not going to take an extern and just say, here, go ahead and, curl this person's hair. Now that we can deal with natural talent, we can talk about natural talent, we can talk about fast learners, but we're talking about the 250 hours that they are getting for the basis before they even got into a salon. I don't think that's unrealistic. I think that there should be an option for them to be paid, however, because I think that saying, because they're getting less hours and then putting that burden on, saying that they have to be paid is a difference. But I don't personally think, I would like to see, we can talk about what we like to see, but if I get an apprentice after the 90 days, I make sure that they're in there, with the hours designated and giving them the training that's needed. That's the whole idea, so they can get to the workforce sooner instead of being held back by schooling and unnecessary training that they're not going to use in the salon setting.
I totally understand what you're saying, but I think what the issue is, because on DRC, where we've sat on so many, we have so many people, which you haven't sat on a DRC yet, where you see all these cases of people. It's a lot of people out there working without supervision. So you're one of the smaller percentage, I would say, that does it what I've seen correctly, but there's a lot of not correct going on out there. So that would be my concern.
Jackie, would you feel better about this if we increase the number of hours of schooling required before participation at the establishment?
May I speak? I've been raising my hands for the last
I'm sorry,
5 minutes.
I apologize.
Speaking about SB 803, and I apologize for not being in the meeting, for the last meeting with the board. But after reviewing all those change, and I think I can see that if I can make a motion now for the change, if I may.
You can always make a motion at any time. This is Sabina.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Sabrina. Okay, I make a motion for, first, we remove the proposed 600-hour cutting license. And the second one is place cosmetology at 1,500 hours and barbering at 1,200 hours. And last is preserve the practical exam. And I think this bill is unfairly single out hair licensee and undermine their education and training.
Do we have a second to that motion? All right, if we don't have a second to that motion, then we would move on that resolution and not pass.
This is Sabina. Can I interrupt for just one moment?
Yes.
Sorry. I just wanted to make sure, I know that this great memo that the board did for the bill analysis left, there were 3 outstanding issues on the second page. I want to make sure that we also end up, during our discussion, we do make sure we address these, which also can be incorporated in a motion later. Today we don't have to come up with the exact language you want to put in the bill. You can have, the concept, the idea, the hours, do they get paid? Do they not get paid? Do we add in barbering students? That kind of stuff. And then the board staff and the EO will work with the author's office to to convey that information, those requests in the letter to them in your support if amended or oppose unless amended. So don't worry about crafting any specific language here today. Just let's make sure we cover all our bases about what are the outstanding issues and any other changes you'd like to make or request to be made.
So if I could jump in real quick on the extern issue, if we could all look at the actual bill that's in our packets and look at page number 21 of the bill. I think it breaks down the extern language, and maybe we could just have a discussion of each section. And because I think there's a few things going on, like when the hours should be and if they should be paid. So if you look at page 21, about halfway down, it talks about it's section number 25, section 73951. So what this section does is changes the minimum number of hours that have to be completed before someone can be an extern from 60% of a 1,600-hour course to 25% of a 1,000-hour course. So I think maybe the board could discuss just this aspect right here first, so we can see if what the board's thoughts are on just getting the externs into the salon at completing 250 hours of a 1,000-hour course.
Well, I was looking at that, and that was one of my questions, which is why I jumped in, was on where the strikeout on line 23 says work as an unpaid extern in an establishment. I think that it should be an option versus I think it should be an option because they are not licensed, versus the apprenticeship program, they are licensed. So they have done the additional work to get the license to work immediately on clients. That was my question. My concern was the option of being paid or unpaid.
We have two questions appearing on this paragraph then. One is the percent of clock hours required, that we should make sure we're all in agreement on that. And second, the idea of paid or unpaid. So both of those should probably be addressed by us.
I definitely agree about, I mean, the 25% I'm okay with. I mean, I don't know, how do I do it? The motion to say yes?
I think we should personally be a little higher since we've cut down the hours now from 16 to 1,000. I think we should have a little bit more, so maybe a little bit of a sweet spot in between that. And I don't think they should get paid.
Okay, so we have two opposite programs. The hours should remain the same, hours should increase, they could get paid or unpaid. So maybe we should lead with one of those motions and see what the tenor of the board is.
Just a couple comments, just to give you more information. So currently, just so you know, the way the extern program is today, in a 1,600-hour program, an extern cannot go into a salon until they complete 960 hours. So that's how it is today, because an extern must go in at a minimum of 60% completed. So it's really getting them into the kind of the home stretch, I assume, of their educational approach. So just so you have that in your minds, that right now an extern has to be in school for 960 hours. And of course, that would be almost the entire 1,000-hour of our new program at 1,000 hours. So with the 1,000 hours, that's where the decrease is to 250 hours. So just keeping that in mind for your discussion. But I think that I would like to hear from the members on what they think right now. If you're in a 1,000-hour program, after they complete 250 hours, can they go into a salon and work on consumers?
As a board member, I would favor an increase in that to perhaps 500 hours.
I would second that.
Any other thoughts on any other board members?
Oh, this is Callie Mae. I have my concern is if we're talking about 250 hours, are enough of those hours the health and safety hours that we have delineated in the new language? We said 100 hours on this, 100 hours on that. And if we're talking about 250, I don't know if all of the health and safety would be covered in that time before they get into the work environment. So I would be in favor of a higher number, and I think half sounds reasonable.
I can go for half. I mean, I look at it a different perspective of education side, but 50% of their time spent in education in the program and then going into the salon is not unreasonable.
Does someone want to make a motion on that?
I think before you make a motion, maybe we could go through the rest of the bill. I mean, just on this section.
Fine.
I would pose to you, should externs be paid or not?
I'm going to say no, because if we do it as an option, I don't know if we should. I mean, it's what it was before. Like, I just feel we're already cutting down the hours to 1,000 hours. We're doing a lot to help the barrier of entry, but we also have to help protect the consumer. And I think, I worry that a lot of people will take advantage of this, as we've seen in the past. So we need to be careful.
Any other comments on being paid?
I don't think, I really feel like that should be a option left up to between the extern and the school, or I'm sorry, the establishment and the school.
If we left it up to an individual basis, establishment by establishment, wouldn't it be confusing in the interpretation there of someone that wants to enter an externship program, whether it's advertised that they could be paid or not be paid? I wonder if it's better if we should take a stance one way or the other. I tend to favor some sort of payment on something like this, but again, there's people on this board that are also hands-on in this profession, so I respect what you say too.
Could we offer some sort of maybe an educational stipend of some sort?
I don't know that we could. I would like to pose this to the board. What if we knew who they were? In other words, my concern with externs in general is the fact that they're performing services on a client, on a consumer. They are supposed to be receiving constant supervision, and those of you who have sat in on DRC know the issues we have with that. But the difference between an apprentice and an extern is we know where the apprentice is working, and we know who their trainer is, and we know who their salon is. And with an extern, we have nothing. So I don't know that the author or anyone at the legislature would agree to this, but if it would make sense that if we're going to allow someone to perform services on a consumer, that the board should know who that person is. So what if there's a way we could have them register their students with us so that we would know who's providing extern services in a salon?
I agree with that, Christy. Totally agree with that.
I agree with that also. I think it's necessary for our inspectors. It's necessary for us and the public to have confidence.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I was trying to get to, because if we're going to start picking this, I'm just more worried about the consumer safety. And I know people will take advantage of this because of DRC. I mean, everybody's looking for a way to get around. I shouldn't say everybody, that's very strong. A lot of people look for a way to get around the system so they can just get to work. And I mean, we're trying to appease everybody so much with already going down to 1,000 hours and the 600-hour license. I don't know how much more we can do. And you've got the apprentice program, and you've got, I mean, there's so much going on. We just need to, obviously our job is to protect the consumer. So we need to be mindful of that, I feel.
I would agree. I think registering students with our board would be a necessity. We have to have knowledge, but we aren't addressing right now the question that we're talking about, whether they should be paid or unpaid externs.
I think the reason why I pose that is because you have some salons who are looking for externs and will post unpaid. So if people want to be, if they're in school and they can't, and they want to get into a salon, I think that should be an option of that student to decide if they want to go work at this place or if they want to get the training from this place. They understand that it's an unpaid extern. It doesn't diminish the quality of the education that they're giving. It just allows more salons and more people to participate and open the door a little bit more for establishments to help with the gateway of someone getting into salon and getting training.
Well, there's historical precedence in that college interns, extern, some college students are paid for their summer work, some are not paid, some are given credit against their tuition or their school hours. So there is some history in this. Anyone else want to jump in on the paid, unpaid question? Please.
And just from a staff perspective, I don't know that we have a concern whether they're paid or not, as long as we know who they are. I think when you pay them, we have to, a consumer is receiving services, and a salon again, most schools right now and salons that participate in the extern program have done very well. This is a shorter program, allowing more hours, and I agree that there is going to be abuse, and that's why I think we have to have some type of tracking of who we're putting into this program. We don't want our students to end up being free labor or cheap labor in salons.
I'm having trouble seeing if we're or the distinction we're drawing between apprentices and externs, in that we already allow apprentices to be paid. So the apprentice is somebody, well, who we've identified, which I think is very important. But from there, they're getting on the job training and they're getting paid for it. So they're working towards their license and they're getting paid for it. I don't really see then why externs shouldn't be allowed to get paid when they're functionally doing the same thing. And I suspect that's really what the legislators are getting at, is that we're doing it for apprentices and why not for externs. So that would be my position, is if we can identify them and address the safety concerns, I don't have a problem with them being paid.
On the paid and unpaid question, on line 23, graduation in the course, work as an extern in the establishment. By striking out the unpaid, doesn't that in itself give the establishment an option to pay them or not pay them?
Correct.
So that's in the bill right now, an establishment's option.
Well, Steve, I looked at that 100 million times and did not come up to that conclusion. So thank you.
You can be my extern anytime you want.
And just to Kelly May's point, an apprentice does have to get a license from us before they can go to work in a salon. And on that license, it has the establishment name, and they have to register with us who is their trainer. They can have more than one trainer, but they have to tell us who When we go into an establishment, who's your trainer? It's in our system. So the difference is with the externs is we don't even have their name and we've gone in, and I actually did receive a message from one of our DRC staff that they have had externs who've been cited for unlicensed activity because they just tell us that they're an extern and we have nothing to prove on.
So is our discussion on this portion of the bill now down to a possibility of increasing the hours and adding that they should register students with our board only? If so, maybe someone wants to make a motion.
Before we go there, if I could just draw your attention to section B down on line 26. And that is, a person working as an extern shall receive clock hour credit toward graduation, but that credit shall not exceed 25 hours per week and shall not exceed 25% of their total clock hours. So we know the 25%, which the board's discussing 50%, but keep in mind that previously they could only be in an establishment for 8 hours a week. And now we're allowing them to be in an the bill allows them to be in an establishment 25 hours a week.
I think that's fair. I think for most hours, it's either anywhere from 4 to 6 hours per day, 3 days a week. But I guess it depends on how their program is structured. But I think 4 to 6 hours a week a day is pretty much where that kind of falls into. Because if it's 8 hours a day, it's only 3 days a week.
I just have a lot of concerns that this is going to be abused. So I don't know how to find somewhere in the middle that we all can agree to. Because with the apprentice, their license, we know where they are. If we can track it, you guys, I'd really hate our industry to just go down the tubes in the sense of having even more stuff of people doing hair who aren't equipped. So I'm just concerned.
Are you worried that if the credit shouldn't exceed 25 hours per week, are you worried that their work experience will run ahead of their educational experience and they may not be qualified for doing some of the work they're doing?
Exactly. I feel like this is just going to turn into some more cheap labor because we've seen so many people abuse that at DRC. I want to set these kids up for success. I do agree on the job training is wonderful. I'm not opposed to those things. I just don't want it to get abused. So I don't know how to come to a common ground on that. I just really want to set these future service providers up for success and keep our industry having some standards and however we can do that as a happy medium.
Well, if we were working with the $500, just for point of discussion, if we were working with the 500 hours that were required, that would change that 25% to 50%. Would that be something that you'd feel better about?
Sure.
And how do we deal with the question of 25 hours per week? Is that asking too much of a student? I'd ask our board members that are establishment owners that know this type of question.
I think I limit, even the apprenticeship program allows 32 hours per week. They get 32 hours. They have to, actually, matter of fact, they have to have 32 hours, a minimum of 32 hours per week on the apprenticeship program. So as an extern, because the programs are different, remember, someone in an extern program is actually in a cosmetology school that is getting their education there versus an apprenticeship program where they show up to the apprenticeship program 1 day a week and then they spend the rest of their time in the salon. So although the education is there, the approach is different. I think 25 hours a week is adequate for someone learning, depending on, I mean, we can go through all the variables, but hour-wise, I think if we're okay with apprentices being in there at 32 hours a week, and we know who they are, we know who their trainer is, then we have to allow the same provisions for an extern. If we're saying, okay, we'll do 500 hours a week, we need to know who they are, where they are, then why not allow the 25 hours per week? Anything more than that, I think, is a little bit excessive, because now you're taking them from a traditional learning platform. And that would go back to what your concern, what you just said, Steve, taking them out of a traditional learning platform versus the apprenticeship learning platform.
I think I'm kind of moved by your original statement that when you compare this to someone in an apprenticeship program that is not having any formal schooling as any real classroom studies as far as that goes, and that apprenticeship is allowed to work more hours per week or minimize more hours per week, it kind of puts that 25 hours in a better perspective, given that they will have formal educational hours behind them.
I would just caution the apprentice reform that we are working on right now because of how much abuse there is in the apprentice program. I don't mean to be the naysayer, because I actually completely agree with what you're saying. We just have to be involved more, because we don't want to end up in a situation in years from now where we're then trying to figure out why none of our students from schools are passing an exam because they've been spending all their time in salons. And there's just, it's unfortunate how much we find apprentices in working without supervision and how low their pass rates are. So I just want us to keep that in mind. I completely agree that there should be an externship program. And I just, from a board's enforcement perspective, we just need to know who these people are, so there's not an abuse happening.
I totally agree with you, Christy. I think that was when I was signing up for the apprenticeship program, and realizing that me as a trainer have to train my other trainers to stick with board, making sure they pass the test versus how things are done in the salon. So, I mean, that's just a realistic crossroads that you come into when you have someone training to pass the test versus training to work in a salon environment.
Christy, is there anything else in this bill you think we should take a hard look at as long as we're talking about this section?
No, I think that, I'm sorry. The one thing that is a concern is that the bill is only talking about cosmetology. And we do now have a barbering apprenticeship program.
That definitely needs to be changed.
Yeah, that's fairly new. We don't have an extern program. I said apprentice. But we do have externs for barbering. That changed recently. Excuse me. We have not ever had an extern for the shorter programs, the aesthetics or manicuring or electrology. I believe it's just because they're shorter programs. So I don't know if the board would want to discuss that as well, but it definitely should not only apply to cosmetology. And I assume that was just an oversight, so not intentional.
That would be an easy add-on to our resolution here, that barbering be included in that. As far as the other licenses are concerned, I think that may be more problematic because of the short nature of their education to begin with.
Sabina, I wanted to recap everything I've heard and make sure my notes are correct, so we can make sure we keep track of this as we get ready for a motion in a little bit. So bear with me real quick. This is what I'm hearing from everybody. I have one as an addition of barbering, two, an addition of some way to register our externs, some method. Again, we don't have to find language right now, just the idea, the concept. And then we have the idea of upping the percentage to 50% of the hours instead of it where it is right now at 25%. And then we're okay with the strikeout of the unpaid as the extern, since that leaves it ambiguous enough that if they do get paid, it's not in violation of that section. Did I capture everything so far?
Did you mention the increase in the hours to 500 hours or whatever it may be from 250?
That's the 50% instead of 25%? Yes, so that's in subdivision A and B. Do you guys, in subsection B, do you want that up to 50% as well?
So that's two different things. So
Yeah.
one is one is saying that they have to complete 50% of their course before starting an extern program, is I think what they agreed on. But how many hours can they get from the extern program?
Right, so if you're okay with subsection B, that remains unchanged if that is correct, and then it would be subsection A where you would potentially ask for it to be 50%.
In subsection B, we're changing the 25% to 50%. You've already done that. No?
So in subsection B is how many hours they can complete in a salon and get credit for. Should that be 250 hours? Should that be 25%? So it's two different things. One, I think you all agreed and conceded to the fact that you can have you need to complete 50% of your schooling before becoming an extern. So you need to be in school for 500 hours before going into a salon. So I think we all agree on that. And second, how many hours can they get working in a salon to be applied to that 1,000-hour course? And that's subsection B.
I think 250 hours is high, in my opinion, since they're only doing 1,000 hours. But I mean, it just, gosh, are we deregulating ourselves? I mean, just let them go do whatever.
But I think in subsection B, I'm back to your question, Jackie. It's saying 25 hours per week, so it's not 250 hours. In section B,
well,
it says percentage.
It's 20. They can only do 25 hours a week, and they can't exceed 25% of the total clock hours. So they
that would be
can't
250
exceed,
hours.
right.
Okay.
This is Callie Mae. I'm fine with the 25% for the credit they should receive. So that's a quarter of the course. And as again, if we look at the bill and the breakdown for the types of training we want or how we want those hours to be spent, there are breakdowns for, I think, like kind of technical skills in certain arts. And so it would make sense for me if those things were, learned in a salon and training. I don't think 25% of the overall seems like too much, but I'm welcome to hear like other opinions on that. But that would.
I agree with you, Callie Mae, on that.
Okay, this is Sabina again. So I'll just recap it one more time so that we all are clear the edits that we've discussed. So in subsection A, you're interested in seeing about 50% of the clock hours, which is the education required before they begin. And B, you seem to be okay with how much hours they can earn. The strikeout of the unpaid is still fine. We have an addition of barbering, and we also have an addition of some method of registering the externs.
I think that's a fair statement of our discussion so far. Thank you. So does anyone wish to make this motion?
This is Callie May. I would move for the motion as stated by Sabina.
Do we have a second?
I second. This is Tanya Fairley.
Okay, great. Excellent.
More board discussion before we ask for public comment on your motion.
Wait, is there anything else in SB 803 we want to discuss before we go to public comment? If not, we can go to public comment then.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. We'll go in the order that comments are received, and once you are unmuted, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. And it looks like we do have a couple individuals who have requested public comment, so let me pull them up. Our first individual who has requested public comment is identified as Wendy Jacobs. Wendy, I will be requesting to unmute your microphone now.
Cochrane, California.
All right, there you are, Wendy. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Wendy Cochrane, California Aesthetic Alliance. Thank you very much to everybody that has supported all the estheticians in our first revision of scope of practice since 1978. Much appreciated to the board and everybody that spoke up on behalf of licensed estheticians in California during the proceedings on the 14th. First, really quickly on 803, hair only with no chemicals does not make you competitive on a national level for that compact license. Other hairstyling only licenses across the country do include chemical services. So I just wanted to point that out. And then let's talk about the internship or the externship, excuse me. Obviously, as I've stated pretty much since 2014 in my involvement in these meetings, is we are asking for equitable treatment of all license types. This does not include aesthetics. This does not include manicuring or electrology. Aesthetics and electrology especially have a lot of highly technical things that we could benefit from learning on the job, but we are not being included in this. Secondly, externships take positions away from new licensees. And if the intention of the legislature is to get us all working as quick as possible by decreasing the hours that are required for cosmetology and barbering, you would be handing out these externships
30 seconds
to folks that don't have licenses. I guess that's all I got. I would say, though, also that the DSLE has certain rules in place for interns as well, or externs in this place. Any businesses that use interns in the state must submit an outline of their proposed internships to the department. The qualifications required for interns in California are very similar to those on the federal level.
All right, this is the moderator. We've reached time, so we'll move on to our next individual's requested public comment. Individual identified as Fred Jones. Fred, I will be requesting to unmute your microphone now. All right, Fred, you are unmuted.
Super. That was a little bit cumbersome. Fred Jones on behalf of the Professional Beauty Federation of California. I know you spent a lot of time on the externship. I will say, regarding Wendy's comment, it expressly says this cannot displace an existing licensee as a condition for an extern to work in a salon or an establishment. But I think the real elephant in the room is the 600-hour haircutting only license. I agree with Wendy. That is not a lifelong career if it's limited to merely haircutting without any chemicals or coloring. 80 to 90% of cosmetologists consistently say they only want to do hair, but they want to do all hair services, not just cutting. So the reason why we supported a hairstylist license and asked your board to consider supporting a hairstylist license was to address the barriers to entry concern by legislators. Unfortunately, they cut down the hours of cosmetology and barbering, draconian amounts, and then they created their own form of a very limited haircutting license. So we would suggest to just scrap that 600-hour non-serious career pathway program that they cooked out of thin air without any industry input, and seriously consider addressing the 1,000-hour master license that we call cosmetology. We think that's way too low.
30 seconds.
So we certainly would have supported Ms. Tran's earlier motion. We're willing to drop cosmetology to the national average of 1,500, and we're also willing to consider dropping barbering down to 1,200 hours. But both at 1,000 hours is going to undermine the professionalism and safety of the next generation of licensed professionals. And please preserve the practical exam. We need hands-on competencies. And if we get rid of that portion of the exam, students will also get rid of that attention during their schooling on those.
All right, this is a moderator. We'll move on to our next individual's requested public comment. Individual identified as R. Ramirez. R. Ramirez, I'm going to be requesting to unmute your microphone now. And R. Ramirez, when you get a dialog box that pops up that says you're being asked to unmute yourself, please click the unmute me button and that'll unmute your microphone so you can make your comment. All right, it looks like unfortunately they are not unmuting their microphone, so we will move on to our, well, they did type in their question in the comment box, so I'll at least read it. They asked, if this is passed, when will it take effect? For now, I'll go ahead and move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Alicia Orabella. And Alicia will be requesting to unmute your microphone now. All right, Alicia, you are unmuted.
Hi, so thank you for having me. I want to go on record and agree with everything that Wendy Jacobs said. Super stoked about the estheticians finally being able to perform services that most of us cosmetologists are not performing. As a practicing licensed cosmetologist of 34 years, hair color expert, educator, and salon owner, I do have a few concerns regarding the hair only license. Not much has changed since graduating from beauty school in 1989. Too many wasted hours sitting and not learning. So reducing the cosmetology and barber license hours to a 1,000 hours is definitely a move in the right direction. However, proposing a 600-hour haircutting and styling license is too limited to our scope of practice. In order to make the proposed hair-only license viable, it definitely needs to include coloring, perming, relaxing, and all chemical services. I also feel that, you know, we could hone in on the health and safety and sanitation and disinfection and make that a little more user-friendly. And by freeing up some additional unnecessary hours, it is entirely possible to keep learning, to learn cutting, styling, perming, relaxing, and at basic competency level. As an expert educator, I can assure you how much can be taught in very minimal time. I teach all over the United States to multiple competencies ranging from students, freshly graduated, basic knowledge, and the advanced. My programs range from 3 to 6 hours, 1, 2, and 3 days. So that being said, the proposed hair-only license does not benefit our industry by simply providing a license to cut and style. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to our next individual identified as Chris Tullis. And Chris, I will be requesting to unmute your microphone now. All right, Chris, you are unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. This is Chris Tullis. I'm the owner of the California College of Barbering and Cosmetology. You know, in 2 minutes' time, I don't really have enough room to express the broad range of objections I have to the legislation, but I do want to say as a process matter, and particularly in response to Stephen Weeks' suggestion that we have been late to this discussion. I, as an owner of a school, have never received any kind of formal notification about this legislation, and which affects our industry to a great deal. Secondly, you really have to be a legislative geek to be looking at every single bill that's coming down the pike. And third, you know, for the last 16 months, we have been involved in keeping our schools open and our students alive, and haven't really had the time to focus on this particular piece of legislation. However, we are engaged right now, and we're setting up a meeting with Senator Roth in order to discuss some alternatives to this legislation. And my request would be that you table this vote until we expect that there are going to be some further amendments coming out of that discussion. And so we respectfully request that you table this vote until the legislation in front of you is the final version with any amendments that might come out as a result of that discussion. We've been working furiously to come up with responsible alternatives to SB 803, and we hope that you would wait and give us the courtesy of listening to what we have to say and seeing what those amendments look like.
30 seconds.
That's all.
All right, we will go ahead and move on to our next individual's requested public comment, individual identified as Seth. And Seth, I will be requesting to unmute your microphone now. All right, Seth, you are unmuted.
Hi, everybody. My name is Seth Kaplan. I'm the owner of Crew Institute of Cosmetology and Barbering. Along the lines of what Chris said, we have very strenuously been trying to be a part of this, and we tend to be blocked at just about every junction that there is. In addition, the 600-hour course that was proposed as a haircutting course, I feel will lead to a tremendous amount of abuse. I think that there will be pop-up schools that try to sell hours. I think that there will be students that are taken advantage of. And you keep asking, or you guys keep saying that this is not a bill that's sponsored by by chains or by corporations. But the reason that they were the first ones to get on board and to say that they're in support of this bill is because they essentially have been proposing this for a very long time. They want to cheapen this industry, and they want to get the lowest, most uneducated person they can, so that they can finally fill up their shops that nobody wants to work in because they don't pay enough. We have a very healthy industry here. My students that graduate make very good livings. They pass the state board. There's no issues here. It's as if we're fixing something that's not broken. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't an opportunity to revamp curriculum and possibly lower hours and do things like that. But to make sweeping changes like this without actually going into and asking
30 seconds.
Asking people in the industry for input just seems completely disingenuous. It doesn't seem as if as if you're really wanting any help or any support from us. It just seems as if you guys are going to do what you're going to do without regard to what the people who train everybody actually thinks what might work. Anyways, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and we'll move on to our next individual's requested public comment. Individual identified as MacBook. And MacBook, I will be requesting to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
Hi, everybody. My name is Omar Monzon. I'm actually the owner of Master Academy located in Long Beach, California. And, I'm calling in because I honestly, everything that Jess said and everything that Chris said, I mean, that all makes sense. We were never reached out to. We never received any emails asking us for our information, our input on this bill. I strongly agree with Seth. I think the 600 course is just a joke. People are going to take advantage of it. Barbers are still going to shave it when they're with that license. Cosmetology or people that get this license, the 600 one, they're still going to do chemicals. They're still going to do a lot of stuff that they shouldn't be doing because they're going to get bored eventually out of working just cutting hair, and styling hair. So I really feel that this 600-hour course should be just something that shouldn't even be brought upon or just get rid of it. It just makes no sense. Again, people will take advantage of that license. We're already reducing it to 1,000 hours for cosmetology. So I think if people are really serious about joining this profession, they should just go ahead and do the 1,000-hour program. I mean, that's a huge reduction from 1,600 to 1,000 hours regardless. So I think if they're going to be really serious about it, just get rid of that 600-hour course. And again, we would just like to be able to get some input in this. All of the school owners, we've gotten together, we've talked, and nobody has reached out to us. Nobody received one email. Nobody was asked anything within the last year and a half, 2 years. And like Chris and Seth said, we're just trying to keep alive. We're trying to keep our students alive.
30 seconds.
We're just trying to make sure that, we were able to get through this pandemic and not have to worry about SB 803 just ripping our industry apart. That's all I got to say. And thank you very much.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to our next individual who has a requested public comment. Jamie Schrebeck. One moment. All right, Jamie, I will be requesting to unmute your microphone now. And you are unmuted.
Jamie Schrebeck. Good morning, this is Jamie Schrebeck from Precision Nails. There's certainly a lot happening in SB 803, most of which I agree with. My concern with dealing with the extern program is that we're already hearing a lot of confusion between apprenticeship and externship. I never thought apprentices should have had licenses to begin with. I always thought that should have been a permit, but that's a conversation for a different day. I actually appreciate Jackie Crabtree's proposal, which was to strike this from this bill entirely. I think it needs to be taken up separately. My concern is that not only does the board not know who is participating in this program as a student, but does not understand which salons are participating, and that only salons that have 4 employees or more can participate is limiting. And who's verifying that? Who's validating that the salon owners are actually compensating people properly and providing all of the labor rights that we know that workers are entitled to in that sort of setting? And again, to echo what Wendy Cochran said, this is very limiting, and that doesn't give other license types the opportunity to pursue this option, because of course we know that it's only limited to barbers and cosmetologists currently. Thank you so much.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Yolanda Duran and Victoria Espinoza. Oh dear. There are 3 of these logged in, so I'm going to try to request to unmute the correct one. So give me one moment while I try the first one. All right, that appears to not be the correct one. So Yolanda, I'm going to try to request to unmute the second login. All right, and that one did not request to unmute, so we will try the third one. All right. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that Yolanda is unmuting. Yolanda, if you could please make sure that you are only logged in once so I can correctly identify which account to request to unmute. And then when you get the prompt to unmute yourself, please click unmute me. In the meantime, we're going to move on to the next individual's requested public comment, and I will loop back to you momentarily. So for right now, we will move on to individual identified as Demi. Demi, I will request to unmute your microphone now. And you are unmuted.
All right, am I good to speak?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to touch on a few things that you guys had in the very beginning of the meeting with the stats on the rates of passing the licensing exam with an apprenticeship versus a traditional school. The rates on passing were lower. However, an apprentice is 2 years, an apprentice for our Cosmo and Barber programs. And they are coming in for a day of instruction.
This is the moderator. It appears that this comment is not related to the bill that the board is voting on, so I've muted the individual. And we will move on to our next individual as requested public comment. Please make sure that you are only making comments relevant to the bill that we are currently discussing. We're going to move on to individual LAUSD user. I will request to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are now unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. My name is Roxana Sanchez, and I'm talking or speaking in behalf of the teachers, the Barbering and Cosmetology teachers of California. We've been discussing this bill lately, and we are objecting this bill in many ways. One of them is because the reduction of cosmetology hours will actually diminish and not will give proper instruction to cosmetologists, knowing that they have to do all phases in the beauty industry, from cutting hair, facials, and nails. Also, during the testing, I know the nail services, the safety of nail services are very emphasized. So cutting off hours of instruction will promote to the health and safety hazards to our clients or customers or public. Also, the barber hours reduced it to 1,000 hours, which that is what is stated, is very minimum. I think as students, we also think students need to practice a little more of that safety, because it's very common to see that in barber shops, they forget about the safety and protection of the client. That's what it is. And the course for hairstyling for 600 hours, that is opposing to it. We totally don't like that, because that doesn't make any sense for having somebody to touch hair with only 600 hours. Our education is being
30 seconds.
Very bad lately, because this bill is not going to help anyone to be well prepared. It's not only the safety that they have to learn, but they also have to learn the skills in the trade. And the only way they can do that is by practicing. If you do not allow students to practice while they're in the school, they will practice with public, and so then we have a lot of more complaints. Also, the Sunset Review in 2018 it states, what is it, a hairstyling like.
This is the moderator, and we have reached 2 minutes. So we'll move on to our next individual's requested public comment. We're actually going to go back to Demi, who has stated that their comment is relevant to the bill. So one moment. All right, and Demi, I will be requesting to unmute your microphone now. You have 2 minutes and a 30-second warning.
Thank you. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the data was showing that we do need a structured program with more than 1,000 hours. A 600-hour license is not going to warrant the time and the education that these students need, not only to pass a competency test to show that they're competent in the industry, but to be safe. We're not setting them up for success with a 600-hour program. We definitely need to look at reforming some antiquated, outdated stuff that we are teaching, but we need to look at that. We don't need to look at bringing in a 600-hour program. I really think we need to focus on maybe reducing the hours, but not to 1,000. We are not setting these students up for success this way. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and we will move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. We're going to loop back to Yolanda, and hopefully they are able to unmute their microphone. I still see 3 logins for Yolanda, so I'm going to try each one. So Yolanda, I'm going to try to request to unmute the first login.
Morning, can you hear me?
Looks like we can hear you. Thank you. I'll go ahead and start the timer.
Good morning. First of all, I'm glad I was able to get through. I am a school owner, but more than anything else, I want to say that I am a licensed manicurist, licensed cosmetologist, and I also went for skincare throughout my career. As a single mother, I had the opportunity to actually one by one as I needed. But the most important part is removing the 600 cutting license. As a owner now, of a cosmetology school, I find that even in the barbering program, 600-hour cutting, in the 600-hour cutting, there's no razor there. So would the barber have to come back and then take the 1,000 hours so that they can learn the razor and be able to have a license that use it? Number one. Number two, we are a mechanical industry. We learn with our hands, and a lot of times the training in the school is the timing, the professionalism, and most important, the safety of the individual themselves, especially the general public. Number two, I wanted to make a comment about the externship program. As a school owner, I addressed many salons, and because they had to be covered for the insurance, the
30
liability,
seconds.
they did not want to participate in this, and I had trouble getting shops. So getting paid or not getting paid, I think we have to look at both the externship program and what's really going on with this program. Thank you for your time.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears that was our last individual's requested public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel now?
Yes, please. Thanks.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay,
This is
now
Christy. Mr. Weeks, if I could just make a quick comment, just real quick, I just wanted to mention that if this bill is goes through the process, it would not go into effect until January 1. So just for everyone that is on the phone, that is would be the effective date, unless something has changes. But as of right now, it would be January 1. And just another reminder that this is the board sunset bill. This bill was presented to us. The board did not create this bill and did not author this bill. So this is a process of the legislature when we go through sunset review, which has been going on now for, it's been delayed at least 2 years. And with that, I will end my comments. And I do believe we might have a board member with their hand up. Ms. Tran?
I'm sorry, Christy, I was accidentally have it. So
Oh,
have it
okay,
on.
got it.
Do we have someone that wishes to speak?
Well, I say I do a motion that we support this bill if amended of what our lovely attorney has, Sabina, the info.
I think don't we already have a motion?
Yeah, I think we have a motion. Do we
And a
also?
second.
I second. Sorry, you're right.
Yeah, we have that motion in a second. Do you want, and then we had our discussion, then we had a public comment, and now we
Ready to
have time for a vote.
All right. Do we also need additional action on SB 607?
I think Christy was going to include, there's some technical cleanup needed. Was that correct, Christy?
I'm sorry. Steve, you mentioned SB 607.
Yeah,
That's the previous bill?
Do we need additional action on SB 607?
We do not.
Okay, so we're just voting on this one bill, SB 803 now.
Correct.
Okay, in that case, let's, Michelle, let's call the roll of the board.
Okay. Board Member Weeks,
Yes.
Callie Mae Pham,
Callie Mae Pham, yes.
Jackie Crabtree,
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Christy Tran,
Christy Tran, yes.
Tanya Fairley,
Tanya Fairley, yes.
Megan Ellis.
Megan Ellis, yes.
You have 6 yeses, motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. I know it was a lot of good discussion happened on that, and I'm sure there'll be more before this is all over. So we're now ready to move to the next section of our agenda, which is regulation status update. Now, Christy, I guess you're going to walk us through that.
This is the moderator. I just want to ask real quick. I believe we did not do public comment for agenda item 5, executive officers report. Do we want to go back to public comment for that item?
Do we do public comment? There's not a vote required on it.
Right. Sabina, do you have a recommendation for that?
Yes, and of course, comments related to there can also be under public comments on items not on the agenda, but technically we already did the executive officer's report. I'm happy to allow us to go back to see if there are any public comments about the executive officer's report and only that item. And then just as a reminder for the public, agenda item number 9, which is coming up pretty quick, will be our public comment on items that are not on the agenda. So there's definitely more opportunity for public comments just in a few minutes after our regulations update. But we can definitely go back to see if there's any additional comments on just the executive officer's report, which would be item number 5.
I have no problem with that. I think the more that the public has an opportunity to comment on what we do, the better off we all are for it. So I would go back to item number 5, which has been presented by Christy Underwood and the executive office report, and ask that it be open for public comment.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for agenda item 5, executive officers report, please click that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning, and I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please.
All right, it is now closed.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 7, the regulation status update given to us by our executive officer.
Okay, in your packets, we have a memo that provides an update on our current regulations packages. I have super exciting news today. As of Friday was the Office of Administrative Law's due date for the PSP regulations. And while we do not have them in hand yet, we are told we will receive the final approved regulations today. That will make the PSP go into effect on October 1st. It has been about 4+ years in the making, so we are jumping with joy and can now focus on actual taking steps to implement the personal service permit. Again, because of the way OAL works, the implementation, we get approval today, and the implementation is a quarterly, so that we will be effective October 1 again for our PSP. The rest of the agenda items for the regulations update is just updates. Our substantial relationship criteria for rehabilitation, which was required by AB 2138. Those were approved and became effective on June 9th, 2021. Our disciplinary review committee regulations are pending. We actually are pausing on a few regulation packages based on SB 803. We were working on regulations, as you see on the bottom, on externs. But as with our discussion today, we don't want to get regulations approved and then have to turn around and correct them for what happens with SB 803. So the disciplinary review committee, as well as the externs, will be delayed until we see what happens on SB 803, so we can make sure we get those not prolonged any longer than we would need to. And then the following regulation package, which are under current review by either the Department of Consumer Affairs or our agency, which is our transfer of credit, instructional materials, and disciplinary guidelines, and then of course our apprenticeship program, which is that extensive review of the program that the board has previously approved. So those are the updates, and hopefully by our next board meeting, we will have even more good news on our regulations processing. And that's the end of the report for that.
Great news on PSP. I know that has been a long time coming, so now we just have to implement. Are there any questions by any board members on the regulations? If not, then I guess we can, we need to take no action on item number 8, since that's involving the externs. We've already discussed that. So if that's the case, we go on to item number 9 on the agenda, public comment on items not on the agenda by the public.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Currently sharing instructions on the screen for your reference, and I will go in the order that comments are received. Once you are unmuted, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. All right, and it does appear we have one individual who's requested public comment. Give me one moment while I pull them up in my attendee list. Jamie Schrebeck. All right, Jamie, I will be requesting to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
It's still morning. Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails again. As a licensed manicurist and employee-based salon owner, I want to point out that AB 1561, which is moving forward, would exempt manicurists from the AB 5 restrictions that otherwise would apply to independent contractors through 2025. So it's not as wonderful as 231 would have been, which would have struck it all together. But we do have a bill that we could support if it had only made the list of bills being considered for your support or opposition. Thank you.
All right, and it appears that we are also taking comments for agenda item 7 as well, regulations status update. So I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow any members of the public to request public comment for this item as well. All right, and it appears we have no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Please do.
All right, the Q&A feature is now closed.
Do any of the board members have any, got kind of ahead a little bit, do any of the board members have any suggestions for future agenda items also? And if not, let me thank all the board today for making some tough decisions. Let me also thank all the public that participated today. We do listen to what you have to say. It's taken into account. And with that, our meeting of the day can be adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.